Surviving ADX Florence, America's toughest prison. Imagine a place where silence isn't just encouraged, it's enforced. Where some of the world's most dangerous criminals live 23 hours a day inside a concrete box, cut off from human contact. No phones, no freedom, no escape. This is ADX Florence, America's toughest prison. But the real question is, how do you survive it? Before we dive into today's powerful story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more gripping tales. Your support helps us keep sharing these stories, and we wouldn't want you to miss any of the action. Now, let's get started. The birth of a Supermax. Located in Fremont County, Colorado, ADX Florence was built in 1994 after a series of violent incidents in other federal prisons exposed a dangerous truth. Some inmates were simply too violent, too powerful, or too connected to be housed anywhere else. The Bureau of Prisons designed Florence to be escape-proof, discipline-proof, and, in many ways, hope-proof. The layout of fear. From the outside, ADX Florence looks like any other high-security facility. But inside, it's a world designed for total control. Cells measure just 7 by 12 feet, with solid concrete walls, a steel door with a slot for food, and a single narrow window, so small it only shows the sky, not the horizon. This is deliberate. It prevents inmates from knowing exactly where they are inside the prison. Who gets sent here? ADX Florence isn't for just any inmate. It's where the government sends those considered the most high risk: terrorists, cartel leaders, gang kingpins, and inmates who killed inside prison walls. It has been called the Alcatraz of the Rockies, not for its beauty, but for its unforgiving nature. To be sent here, you must be someone the federal system cannot control anywhere else. According to the New York Times, 2017, life inside the box. Once inside ADX Florence, life becomes routine and crushingly monotonous. Inmates spend 23 hours per day in their cells. Exercise is limited to 1 hour in a small concrete yard, known as the dog run, often alone. Meals are delivered through a slot in the door. Conversations with other inmates? Impossible. Human contact? Nearly none. Guards describe the silence as oppressive, broken only by the occasional clank of steel doors. Reported by Human Rights Watch, 2013. The men inside, monsters or broken souls. ADX Florence houses men who have shaped headlines around the world. From terrorist masterminds to notorious killers, these inmates represent the darkest chapters of recent history. But inside these walls, stripped of power and influence, they face a different reality, one that even they can't control. Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. Perhaps the most infamous inmate at ADX Florence was Theodore Kaczynski, known as the Unabomber. Between 1978 and 1995, he killed 3 people and injured 23 others in a nationwide bombing campaign targeting universities and airlines. Convicted in 1998, Kaczynski was sentenced to life without parole and transferred to ADX. Here, his world shrank to a 12-foot cell, with his only connection to the outside being books, letters, and the occasional television program. According to FBI case files and Department of Justice reports, 1998. Zacarias Moussaoui, the 9/11 conspirator. Another inmate was Zacarias Moussaoui, often referred to as the 20th hijacker of the September 11th attacks. Convicted in 2006 on charges of conspiring with Al-Qaeda, he was sentenced to life without parole. At ADX, his radical rhetoric could no longer spread. His communications were restricted, his visits tightly monitored, and his life reduced to silence. For federal authorities, Florence was the only place secure enough to contain him. According to U.S. District Court records, 2006, Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, the drug lord. In 2019, Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, leader of Mexico's Sinaloa cartel, was sentenced to life at ADX Florence. Known for his daring prison escapes in Mexico, including one through a mile-long tunnel, El Chapo became a symbol of defiance against law enforcement. But at Florence, escape is not a word that exists. Concrete, steel, and surveillance make his cell the end of the line. No tunnels, no bribes, no exits. According to the U.S. Department of Justice 2019, the human cost. While some see ADX Florence as justice served, others see it as a place of slow psychological collapse. Former inmates and human rights groups describe symptoms of paranoia, depression, and even suicide. A federal lawsuit filed in 2012 claimed that conditions at ADX violated the Constitution's ban on cruel and unusual punishment. The Bureau of Prisons defended its practices, but even some correctional officers admitted, surviving Florence is not just about discipline, it's about mental endurance. According to the New York Times, 2012, Amnesty International, 2014. The illusion of silence. ADX Florence is not only built to contain bodies, it's built to break minds. Silence is engineered into every detail. The cells are soundproof, reducing noise from neighbors. Conversations are impossible through thick concrete walls. Even exercise takes place in small, enclosed yards where you can't see another human being. Some inmates describe it as living in a tomb. Reported by Amnesty International 2014, Human Rights Watch 2013. A day in the life. The routine is brutally consistent. Wake up at dawn. Breakfast through a steel slot. 23 hours locked inside the cell. 1 hour outside in a concrete pen, alone. Then back inside until lights out. Even meals are eaten in isolation, on a concrete stool molded into the floor. Every movement is controlled. Every minute accounted for. There is no free time, only structured survival. According to Bureau of Prisons Regulations 2010, coping mechanisms. Some inmates cope by creating rigid routines, reading the same book daily, doing hundreds of push-ups, or memorizing texts. Others cling to letters from family, though even these are censored and monitored. For those with no one on the outside, survival depends on mental resilience. Former inmates have said, "If you lose your mind here, nobody notices until it's too late." Reported in the New York Times 2012, Court Testimonies from ADX Lawsuits, 2015. When silence turns deadly. The silence is not harmless. Over the years, ADX Florence has faced lawsuits alleging that mentally ill inmates were left untreated, leading to self-harm and suicide. In 2012, one lawsuit described prisoners smearing blood on cell walls, shouting through vents, and begging for help that never came. The Bureau of Prisons has since claimed reforms, but critics argue that isolation itself is the problem. Florence may be secure, but at what cost? According to the New York Times, 2012, Amnesty International, 2014. Guards in the silence. Even guards describe ADX Florence as eerie. Walking the corridors, they say the silence presses in like a weight. Officers rarely speak to inmates except for commands. Some admit the environment is mentally exhausting even for staff. To many, ADX isn't just a prison. It's a machine designed to grind down everyone inside, whether inmate or officer. Reported by former corrections staff interviews, NPR 2016. The Dark Side. Death inside ADX. ADX. Florence was designed to eliminate violence between inmates. With each prisoner confined to their own cell, assaults and murders that plagued other prisons were nearly impossible. But violence did not disappear. It simply turned inward. The enemy was no longer another inmate. It was the mind itself. Reported by Amnesty International, 2014, Bureau of Prisons Records. The suicide of Richard Lee McNair. In 2010, convicted murderer Richard Lee McNair, who had famously escaped custody twice before, was found dead in his cell. Official reports listed it as suicide. His death highlighted a disturbing reality. Even in a place designed to prevent escapes, ADX could not prevent despair. According to Bureau of Prisons Report, 2010, the lawsuit over mental illness. In 2012, attorneys filed a class action lawsuit against the Bureau of Prisons, arguing that ADX Florence systematically neglected mentally ill inmates. The lawsuit described prisoners mutilating themselves, swallowing razors, and smearing blood on the walls. One inmate was quoted as saying, "They don't treat us, they bury us alive." According to the New York Times, 2012, Associated Press, 2012, the death of Tommy Silverstein. Perhaps the most notorious ADX inmate was Tommy Silverstein, who spent over 36 years in solitary confinement after murdering a prison guard in 1983. He became known as the most isolated man in America. Silverstein challenged his confinement in court, arguing that such prolonged isolation was torture. In 2019, at the age of 67, he died inside ADX, his decades-long fight ending where it began, alone in a cell, according to NPR 2019 Bureau of Prisons records. A rare glimpse of violence. Despite its reputation for control, ADX is not completely immune to violence. In 2005, 2 inmates managed to fatally assault another prisoner inside the facility. Though details remain limited, the incident raised questions about whether total isolation was foolproof, or whether desperation could always find a way to erupt. Reported by the Denver Post, 2005, the human rights debate. Human rights organizations argue that ADX Florence represents a form of psychological death sentence. Amnesty International has repeatedly called for reforms, citing conditions that amount to cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment. The U.S. government counters that ADX is essential to national security. For critics, the question remains, at what point does justice cross into cruelty? Amnesty International Reports 2014, U.S. Department of Justice Statements 2016. The Fortress Reputation. ADX Florence was designed with one goal above, all else. No one gets out. Perimeter fences are layered with motion detectors, ground sensors, and cameras. Guard towers with armed officers watch from above. The desert itself acts as a natural barrier. Miles of empty land surround the prison. Officials say escape is not just unlikely, it's impossible. According to Federal Bureau of Prisons Statements 2001, has anyone ever escaped? In its 3 decades of operation, no inmate has successfully escaped from ADX Florence. There have been attempts, but none have breached the walls. The prison's design eliminates the weaknesses found in older institutions. Unlike Alcatraz, there are no service tunnels. Unlike state prisons, there are no work crews outside the walls. Inmates are simply never given the chance, reported by the Denver Post, 2016. The closest call. In 2009, rumors circulated that inmates had tried to tunnel through a wall using makeshift tools, but official records show these were never credible threats. Every square inch of ADX is monitored, walls reinforced with steel rods, floors checked for tampering, and cells designed to prevent tools from being hidden. Even the rumor of escape only reinforced the prison's myth. Florence is escape-proof. According to Bureau of Prisons Review, 2009, unconfirmed reports noted by the Denver Post, El Chapo's last stop. When Joaquin El Chapo Guzman arrived at ADX in 2019, it symbolized the end of the escape era. After tunneling out of a Mexican prison and fleeing through sewage tunnels, El Chapo found himself in a place where those tricks no longer mattered. His lawyers admitted, he's not going anywhere. For many, that confirmed what had already been true. ADX is the full stop for escape legends. According to U.S. Department of Justice 2019, BBC News 2019, The Illusion of Hope. For inmates, the myth of escape serves both as a dream and a curse. Some spend years fantasizing about breaking free. Others accept that there is no way out. Guards say hope itself becomes another prisoner, always present, but always locked away. At ADX Florence, the walls don't just contain bodies, they erase possibilities. Interviews with former correctional officers, NPR, 2016. Why ADX exists. The 1980s prison crisis. The idea of ADX Florence was born out of chaos. In the 1980s and early 1990s, violence inside U.S. federal prisons was spiraling. Gang leaders were running operations from behind bars, inmates were killing guards, and escapes embarrassed federal authorities. The government needed a solution, a place that could neutralize the so-called worst of the worst. According to Bureau of Prisons history files, Associated Press 1994, the birth of the Supermax. In 1994, ADX Florence opened as America's first true federal Supermax. Its mission was simple: total control. Unlike maximum security prisons, which still allowed limited interaction, ADX was designed for near-complete isolation. Every detail, from the concrete cells to the restricted movement of guards, was meant to eliminate violence and prevent escapes. According to U.S. Bureau of Prisons, 1994, national security fears. The 1990s also brought new fears: terrorism. After the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, federal authorities worried about keeping extremist leaders behind bars. ADX Florence became the chosen destination. By isolating these figures, the government aimed to cut off their influence, ensuring they couldn't inspire followers or orchestrate violence from a cell. According to U.S. Department of Justice, 1995, FBI Archives, The Political Debate. From the start, ADX Florence was controversial. Supporters argued it kept the nation safe by containing its most dangerous criminals. Critics said it was a form of torture, pointing to the extreme isolation and lack of rehabilitation. Members of Congress defended it as necessary, while human rights groups condemned it as inhumane. The debate over Florence became a debate over American justice itself. According to U.S. congressional hearings, 1995 to 2000, Amnesty International reports, 2001, does it work? 3 decades later, the question remains, does ADX Florence actually work? Supporters point to the lack of successful escapes, reduced inmate violence, and the secure containment of terrorists and cartel leaders. Critics argue that it has not reduced overall prison violence nationwide, and that the psychological damage inside Florence creates new problems. For every statistic that shows security, another report warns of human suffering. According to the New York Times, 2012, Human Rights Watch 2013, The Science of Survival. For most inmates, survival at ADX Florence isn't about strength, it's about endurance. Psychologists who've studied Supermax prisons say the human brain isn't built for this level of isolation. Deprived of social contact, many prisoners develop anxiety, paranoia, or hallucinations. To fight back, inmates invent coping mechanisms, turning every small action into a lifeline. According to Human Rights Watch 2013, Journal of the American Academy of Psychiatry and the Law 2007. Physical routines. Exercise becomes a ritual. Some inmates do hundreds of push-ups or sit-ups each day, using their own body as resistance. Others run in place for hours or pace in tight circles inside their 7 by 12-foot cells. The physical exhaustion isn't just about health, it's a way to quiet the mind. According to accounts from former ADX inmates reported by the New York Times, 2012, the power of books and letters. For many, books and letters are the only escape. ADX allows carefully screened reading material, and some inmates become obsessive readers, memorizing passages line by line. Letters from family, though censored, are treasured like lifelines. But for prisoners without outside support, the silence grows heavier. According to Amnesty International, 2014, Bureau of Prisons Inmate Guidelines, Creativity Behind Bars. Some inmates turn to creativity as survival. They write poetry, sketch on scraps of paper, or build elaborate mental games. One former inmate described playing chess in his mind daily, imagining each piece and move in detail. These small acts of imagination become rebellions against the crushing monotony, reported in interviews with former Supermax inmates, NPR, 2016. Religious and spiritual coping. Faith plays a role for many. Inmates are allowed limited access to religious texts, and some spend hours in prayer or meditation. For prisoners cut off from everything else, belief can provide structure, hope, and meaning. Guards say it is often the most faithful who endure isolation with the most resilience. According to Bureau of Prisons Chaplain Records, Associated Press, 2012. Breaking point. But not all find ways to cope. Lawsuits and reports describe inmates who lose grip on reality, hearing voices, smearing feces on walls, or screaming into the silence until their throats bleed. For these men, survival isn't possible. In a place designed to break connections, it often breaks people instead. according to the New York Times 2012 ADX lawsuit testimonies 2015. ADX Florence stands as America's most secure prison, built to contain, control, and silence. But behind those concrete walls, survival takes on a whole new meaning. What do you think? Is this justice, or is it cruelty? Let us know in the comments below. If you found this video insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the world's most notorious prisons.